Welcome to Conspiracy Deconstructed.
Hello.
Today we are really opening the files on one of the biggest, most persistent, mysteries of World War II.
Pearl Harbor.
Exactly. The attack itself and the sources we've looked at argue for something much darker than just unpreparedness.
Yeah, it's not about incompetence in this theory, is it? It's about intent. Deliberate intent.
Right. A calculated decision, maybe even from President Roosevelt himself, to basically let it happen, to drag the U.S. into the war.
It's a huge claim.
Yeah.
Absolutely massive. If it were true, it just changes everything we think we know about America's entry into World War II.
So our goal today is to, step back, look at the evidence presented by the people who believe this, people who believe officials knew the attack was coming and just stood aside.
Yeah, we need to try and get inside the thinking of 1941. Understand the intel, the politics, the whole pressure cooker environment. No emotion, just the sources.
Okay, let's set the scene first. December 7th, 1941. It's etched in memory, isn't it?
Absolutely.
7:55 a.m. Hawaii time. Battleship Row. Just chaos. Torpedoes, bombs.
Devastation, instantaneous, horrifying.
The numbers are stark. 2,476 dead. Navy, Marines, Army, civilians.
And the Pacific Fleet, well, effectively crippled, at least temporarily.
But here's where the proponents of this theory jump in immediately, right? The military strategy.
Yes. Japan's main goal clearly was the fleet. Knock out the battleships, the carriers, if they were there, which they weren't.
Okay.
But what they didn't hit is, from a purely military standpoint, kind of baffling.
The oil reserves.
Exactly. Huge tanks filled with basically all the fuel for the entire Pacific Fleet. They were right there, vulnerable.
And Japan just ignored them. Why? Wouldn't hitting the fuel be just as critical, maybe more so?
You'd think so. That's the point proponents make. Taking out that oil would have arguably crippled the U.S. war effort in the Pacific for maybe, a year? 2 years. Far longer than repairing the ships took.
So the argument is the attack was selective.
Tailored is the word often used. Maximum shock, maximum loss of life to galvanize the public.
But leaving the infrastructure needed to actually fight the war later.
Precisely. It looks, to believers, like an attack designed to be horrific, but not strategically fatal in the long run, setting the stage for this idea of a calculated sacrifice.
Which brings us to the core theory. The back door to war. Stated plainly. FDR knew the attack was coming. He knew because of magic the intercepted Japanese codes.
Right. The diplomatic traffic, the naval signals.
But the theory goes, he deliberately withheld that critical, actionable intelligence from Admiral Kimmel and General Short in Hawaii.
Kept them in the dark.
Right.
Prevented them from mounting a real defense.
And the supposed motivation.
A brutal calculation.
Right.
Roosevelt needed to get into the war against Hitler, against the Axis, but America was deeply isolationist.
Still feeling the hangover from World War I.
Exactly. So the loss of ships, the tragic loss of almost 2,500 lives, proponents argue it was seen as the price.
A pretty cheap price, as one analysis chillingly put it.
Yeah, a necessary shock to wake up the nation and unify it for war.
It's a staggering accusation. Not incompetence, not negligence, but a conscious decision to sacrifice American lives.
It really is. And to understand why anyone would even entertain it, you have to grasp the political climate back then. 1940, 1941.
America was tired of foreign wars, right? Make the world safe for democracy hadn't exactly panned out as hoped after WWI.
Not at all. Disillusionment was deep. Isolationism wasn't a fringe idea, it was mainstream. People did not want another European war.
And Roosevelt himself had campaigned on keeping America out. Your boys are not going to be sent into any foreign wars. He said it over and over.
He did, publicly. But privately, his conviction seems clear from the sources he saw the Axis powers as a direct threat that America couldn't ignore indefinitely.
So he was trapped between what he thought was necessary and what the public would accept.
Completely. Look at the Gallup polls from 41, right up to October. Most Americans were against entering the war then. Maybe later if things got worse, but not yet.
They needed a push.
Roosevelt apparently believed that. He felt the country would only really rally if there was, quote, an overt act of war on the United States. He couldn't just declare war. The political will wasn't there.
Okay, so if you need that overt act, how do you get it without looking like you started it?
Well, this is where proponents point to a specific document. The smoking gun, they call it.
Which is?
A secret memorandum, dated October 7, 1940.
Okay. Who wrote it?
Lieutenant Commander Arthur H. McCollum. He was head of the Far East Desk at the Office of Naval Intelligence, ONI. Not some low-level guy.
And what did this memo say?
It proposed, and this is McCollum's own phrase, a shocking new American foreign policy.
Shocking how?
It explicitly laid out a series of steps designed to provoke Japan, to corner them economically and militarily until they attack the U.S.
Wow. So deliberate provocation laid out on paper.
Unmistakably. McCollum wrote flat out that the U.S. government was, quote, not capable of declaring war against Japan without more ado.
Without more ado, meaning without some kind of incident, some big fuss.
Exactly. Without a Pearl Harbor, essentially. It needed a catalyst.
And this memo, it outlines specific actions.
8 of them. A clear blueprint. Things like increasing aid to China, moving the fleet, imposing embargoes, all designed to tighten the screws on Japan.
And the claim is this blueprint circulated at the highest levels, reached FDR.
Yes. Proponents argue it wasn't just filed away. It was seen, discussed, and quietly adopted as policy by Roosevelt.
Okay.
This is the origin of that backdoor to war phrase. It comes directly from this McCollum memo strategy.
Okay, that context is powerful. It definitely reframes everything that happened in 1941.
It does. It shifts the perspective from diplomatic maneuvering to potentially calculated provocation.
Right. So let's get into the specific evidence that believers use to make their case. They look at actions taken in 41 and say, see, they followed the McCollum plan.
Exactly. They connect the dots between the memo and subsequent U.S. policy decisions.
What's the first big one?
Naval deployment. McCollum's Action F specifically recommended keeping the main U.S. fleet based in Hawaiian waters at Pearl Harbor.
And was that controversial at the time?
Highly. Admiral Richardson, who was the commander-in-chief of the fleet back then, strongly objected. Repeatedly. He argued there was no logical reason for it. He thought Pearl Harbor was too exposed, lacked proper support facilities, and was strategically unsound as a main base compared to the West Coast.
He told this to Washington, to FDR.
Directly. Sources quote Richardson describing a pretty tense meeting with Roosevelt in July 1940. He came away convinced, his words, that FDR was fully determined to put the United States into the war.
So keeping the fleet there, despite the commander's warnings...
Proponents see it as step 1, placing the bait, putting the prime target right in harm's way, making it an irresistible target for the Japanese attack they were allegedly trying to provoke.
Okay, that's Action F. What about Action H from the memo?
The economic weapon, the embargo. McCollum's plan called for cutting off trade with Japan.
And Roosevelt did that.
He did. July 25, 1941, a total embargo. All trade stopped. Crucially, this included oil and fuel imports.
Which Japan desperately needed.
Absolutely. They were an island nation with few natural resources. That embargo was a chokehold.
Did U.S. intelligence understand the severity of that move?
Oh, yes. Commander Joseph Rochefort, he ran Station HYPO, the key code-breaking and intelligence unit for the Pacific Fleet in Hawaii. He reportedly saw the total embargo as an ultimatum.
An ultimatum?
His assessment was stark. Japan now had, quote, no recourse but war. They were backed into a corner.
So the argument is McCollum wrote the playbook, FDR ran the plays, stationing the fleet, imposing the embargo, knowing it would lead to war.
That's the narrative. Provoke the attack. But provocation's one thing. Did they know when it was coming?
Which brings us to the intelligence intercepts, the magic decrypts.
Exactly. This moves from circumstantial evidence about provocation to direct evidence of foreknowledge.
How good was U.S. code breaking by late 1941?
Astonishingly good.
Yeah.
They had broken Japan's top diplomatic code, Purple, by late 1940.
Purple, what kind of information did that give them?
High-level diplomatic traffic. Instructions from Tokyo to embassies, policy discussions, strategic intentions. It was like having a microphone in the Japanese Foreign Ministry.
Wow.
And they'd also cracked key naval operational codes, like the 5-num system.
Which allowed them to track?
Ship movements, fleet orders, operational plans. Proponents argue that with Purple and the naval codes, surprise was virtually impossible. Washington knew what Japan was thinking and planning almost in real time.
And how did this magic intelligence flow? Who saw it?
It was incredibly tightly controlled. The raw intercepts went to a very small circle. Proponents point to routing slips, 151 of them, showing Arthur McCollum, the guy who wrote the provocation memo.
He was the gatekeeper.
He was the primary distribution officer for this critical intelligence. It went through him.
And it went directly to Roosevelt.
Yes. Starting November 12, 1941, just weeks before the attack, Captain Beardall began personally delivering the intercepts to the White House.
Ow!
In a locked leather pouch. Gold lettering marked, "For the President." Bypassing the usual channels, direct to FDR.
So, unfiltered, top-secret Japanese communications hand-delivered to the president daily in the lead-up to the attack.
That's the picture painted by the sources.
Okay, now, The missing files. This seems huge in the conspiracy narrative.
It is arguably the most potent piece of evidence for believers. McCollum prepared regular radio intelligence bulletins, summaries of the latest intercepts.
Okay.
The ones prepared between November 26th and December 3rd, the exact week the Japanese strike force was sailing across the Pacific towards Hawaii, are nearly all gone.
How many?
The records indicate 74 bulletins were prepared in that period. 67 of them are missing from official Navy files.
67 out of 74.
Yes, just vanished. The very documents that would show precisely what intelligence summaries were landing on FDR's desk during that critical week.
That doesn't look good.
To proponents, it looks like a deliberate purge, erasing the proof of what was known, an institutional black hole where the guilt should be.
Okay, so they had diplomatic intercepts. What about tracking the actual attack force, the Japanese carriers? The official story was always radio silence, right?
For decades, yes. That the Kido Butai, the carrier strike force, maintained perfect radio silence, slipped across the North Pacific completely undetected.
But believers dispute that.
Vehemently. They cite logs from U.S. listening posts. KC's in the Philippines, HYPO in Hawaii, King up in Alaska.
And these logs show.
They claim these stations did pick up signals, that they tracked the first air fleet moving north to its assembly point, Hidokapu Bay, in late November.
Are there specific examples? This sounds crucial.
There are. They mention intercepts like a submarine report, ROTU-00, on November 19th. Even more specific, November 22nd, the flagship carrier Akagi supposedly used the call sign 8YUNA.
The flagship wasn't silent?
According to these sources, no. And they say its position was fixed by radio direction finding 028 degrees from the station in Corregidor. If true, that's not silence, that's tracking.
Wow. Any corroboration?
Yes, they point to Dutch cryptographers in Java, at Camera 14, who also reported Japanese naval broadcasts coming from the Kuril Islands area around the same time.
Which is right along the route to Hawaii.
Exactly. Plus, U.S. intelligence was tracking Japanese oil tankers, like the Kyukudo Maru, practicing refueling at sea. That signals a long-range operation, far from home bases.
So intercepts, direction finding, tanker movements, it paints a picture of awareness.
It does. Yet Admiral Kimmel's own intelligence chief in Hawaii, Commander Edwin Layton, later testified the carriers hadn't been heard from.
Which believers see as
proof of the cover-up extending down to the command level in Hawaii.
Yeah.
The Layton was instructed, or chose, to stick to the radio silence story, concealing what HYPO might have actually picked up.
Okay, finally, the deadline message. The smoking gun communication just hours before the attack.
Right. The final part of the 14-part Japanese diplomatic message, it formally broke off negotiations.
And it had a specific delivery time attached.
Yes. It was to be presented to the U.S. Secretary of State at exactly 1 p.m. Washington time on Sunday, December 7th.
Which is 7:30 a.m. in Hawaii.
Precisely minutes before the bombs started falling. Washington knew this deadline meant hostilities were imminent.
When did Roosevelt see this final message with the deadline?
Sources say Commander Kramer delivered the raw intercept to FDR in his study around 10 a.m. Washington time that Sunday morning.
So 3 hours before the deadline.
Yes. And Captain Beardall, who was present, later stated the president read it, noted the 1 p.m. time, but, quote, made no comment on the 1 p.m. deadline. Showed no urgency, no alarm.
Just read it.
According to Beardall's account, yes. Which proponents see as the final confirmation. He knew the deadline, knew what it meant, and did nothing to expedite a warning to Pearl Harbor.
Because, they argue, it fit the plan. It ties back to that earlier war warning sent on November 27th.
Exactly. That message contained the infamous directive. The United States desires that Japan commit the first overt act.
So the argument is, they provoked Japan, tracked the fleet, saw the final deadline message confirming the timing, and consciously let it happen to ensure Japan fired the first shot.
That's the case laid out by believers, connecting the McCollum memo, the actions, the intercepts, the missing files, and the final deadline in action.
It sounds incredibly damning when laid out like that.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
If you only look at that evidence, the conclusion seems almost inescapable.
But that's not the whole story, is it?
Not even close. When you bring in the full historical record, especially the chaos, the incompetence, the bureaucratic failures, and crucially, the obsession with secrecy, the picture becomes much, much murkier.
It's hard to tell where malice ends and sheer screw-up begins.
Exactly. Systemic failure can look a lot like intentional deception, especially in hindsight.
Okay, let's start deconstructing. Where were the breakdowns in Hawaii itself? It wasn't just Washington potentially withholding info, right?
No, the intelligence situation on the ground at Pearl Harbor was a mess. Take the key war start signal, the climb Mount Nitaka message.
Nitakayama Nubor, 1208.
Right. That was intercepted by Station H, Rushfort's unit, on December 2nd. It clearly signaled war was imminent, starting December 8th, Tokyo time. It was in the system in Hawaii.
Huh?
But Commander Layton, Kimmel's intelligence chief, the guy who should have gotten it and screamed bloody murder, later gave conflicting accounts. The sources say he had 4 different stories, basically implying the message never arrived or wasn't understood.
So, was it withheld by FDR way back in D.C., or was it just lost in the shuffle, misfiled, ignored right there in Hawaii?
That's the question. The local command seems to have fumbled it, regardless of Washington.
What about that final all-clear message from the Japanese spy Morimura, the one about the torpedo nets not being deployed?
Another massive local failure. Rushfort at Station HYPO had the technical means to intercept those consulate messages via the RCA link.
The Sarnoff-Roosevelt arrangement.
Right, but the sources say he failed to do so. And worse, when a copy was obtained through other means, it was given to a junior officer, Lieutenant Joseph Finnegan, who completely mistranslated it.
Mistranslated the warning about torpedo nets.
Yes, a critical piece of tactical intelligence, garbled locally. The mistake wasn't even found until 1945. That's not an FDR conspiracy. That's a catastrophic intelligence processing failure right there at Pearl Harbor.
Okay, 2 key warnings potentially fumbled locally. What about Kimmel's own awareness and preparedness? He suspected an air attack was possible, didn't he?
He absolutely did. He had warned Washington back in October about the potential for Japanese broad range of air operations. He knew it was a threat vector.
Yet, on December 7th,
he grounded his long-range reconnaissance planes. 54 PBY Catalinas, the eyes of the fleet, were sitting on the tarmac.
why would he do that if he feared an air attack?
That's the million-dollar question. He later blamed his orders from Washington, saying they were confusing or restrictive. But the record shows those orders did mandate defensive deployment and reconnaissance. It points very strongly to a failure of command judgment, interpretation, or aggression on Kimmel's and Short's part in Hawaii.
Okay, that shifts a lot of the focus to local command failure. Now, what about the Washington angle and this idea of withholding magic? Was there another reason besides malice?
Yes, and it's arguably the biggest counter-argument. Security. Protecting the source.
Protecting the fact that the U.S. had broken the Japanese codes.
Exactly. Think about it. The U.S. had incredible intelligence. FBI wiretaps on the Honolulu consulate, the Morimura bomb plot messages mapping out ship locations in the harbor.
Grid coordinates, KS, KT, FV.
Right. This stuff confirmed Japan was targeting Pearl Harbor specifically. But acting too obviously on that intel, ordering specific defenses based on those spy messages, for instance, would instantly tell the Japanese their codes were compromised.
And losing magic.
Was seen as potentially catastrophic for the entire war effort, long term. That code-breaking advantage was deemed absolutely vital to eventually winning against Japan and Germany. It was the crown jewels of U.S. intelligence.
So keeping magic secret might have been prioritized over warning Kimmel and Short more explicitly.
That's the strong counterargument. The need to know was brutally enforced. Commanders in Hawaii were not told the full extent of U.S. code-breaking success precisely to protect that capability.
That decision, though, created the perfect conditions for suspicion later, didn't it?
Absolutely. And the post-attack actions reinforced it. Rear Admiral Linois issuing that directive to destroy intercept stuff after a few months.
Which conveniently wiped out records before investigations really got going.
It looks terrible. It smells like a cover-up. Even decades later, the NSA cited public interest in national security to avoid releasing full details about magic.
So the cover-up might have been real, but aimed at protecting the method, code-breaking, not necessarily the man, FDR.
That's the critical distinction many historians make. The institutional imperative to protect cryptographic secrets might explain the missing files, the destroyed records, the decades of secrecy, far better than a presidential conspiracy does. Protecting magic was perhaps a higher priority than protecting reputations or revealing the full, messy truth.
Okay, one last piece. That November 27th warning. The United States desires that Japan commit the first overt act. Sounds pretty bad.
It does in isolation, but you have to read the whole message. That warning also listed the places Washington expected Japan to strike.
And Pearl Harbor wasn't top of the list.
No. The expected targets were the Philippines, the Kra Peninsula in Thailand, Borneo, Southeast Asia for resources. An attack on Hawaii was considered possible, but less likely than a move south.
And did commanders elsewhere act on this same warning?
Yes. That's crucial. In the Philippines, General MacArthur and Admiral Hart received essentially the same warnings. They interpreted them correctly, put their forces on higher alert, dispersed aircraft, took defensive measures.
So the warning was actionable. It wasn't designed to be ignored.
Apparently not. The fact that it was acted upon successfully elsewhere points the finger back at Hawaii. It suggests the failure wasn't in the warning itself being deliberately insufficient, but in how it was interpreted and implemented or not implemented by Kimmel and Short.
Wow. So incompetence, miscommunication, bureaucratic inertia, obsession with secrecy. It's a much more complex picture.
Infinitely more complex. Which leads us to the final part. Why? Why does the simple, dark story of FDR's betrayal remain so compelling for so many people?
Yeah, after digging through all this, the missing files, the weird orders, the local screw-ups, the secrecy, why default to the grand conspiracy?
I think it boils down to a few psychological factors. Humans often prefer narratives of conspiracy over chaos or sheer incompetence. History feels more manageable, maybe less terrifying, if big events are seen as planned, even maliciously, rather than just happening due to a cascade of failures.
It's hard to accept that something as huge and tragic as Pearl Harbor could result from, a mistranslated word or a memo lost on someone's desk.
Exactly. That feels unsatisfying, insufficient. A conspiracy, even a terrible one, offers a sense of order, a clear cause, a villain. It replaces the messy, frustrating reality of multiple contributing factors, bad luck, bad judgment, systemic flaws, with a single graspable explanation. FDR planned it.
And there's that appeal of hidden knowledge too, right? Feeling like you see the real story behind the official version.
Definitely. In an age of information overload, believing you've uncovered the secret truth, the thing they don't want you to know, can be empowering. It gives a sense of clarity and control.
Especially when the government itself acts so secretively for so long.
Precisely. The missing monographs, the blacked out NSA documents, the destruction orders, all that actual secrecy feeds the narrative. It validates the feeling that something crucial is being hidden. The institutional need to protect magic inadvertently created the perfect breeding ground for the conspiracy theory about presidential malice.
The secrecy needed to protect the code breaking became the evidence used to accuse the president. It's tragically ironic.
It really is. A catastrophe layered on top of a tragedy of errors and secrets.
So it leaves us, and you the listener, with a really difficult question, doesn't it? Let's assume, just for argument's sake, that entry into WWII was vital to stopping fascism. If achieving that required an overt act, and maybe intelligence was deliberately managed or withheld to ensure Japan struck first, does that horrific end justify the means? Was the sacrifice of nearly 2,500 lives a price some leaders felt had to be paid for a greater global good?
Or is the simpler, messier explanation more likely? That the decades of intense secrecy surrounding Pearl Harbor were primarily driven by the need to protect America's vital code-breaking secrets above all else, rather than shielding a president's guilt.
What stands out more to you when you weigh it all? Presidential malice, driven by grand strategy, or catastrophic, multifaceted institutional failure compounded by an obsession with secrecy? Where does the weight of the evidence fall for you?
It forces you to really think critically about how history happens and how it gets told. Simple answers are rarely the full story.
Something to definitely ponder. Thank you for joining us on Conspiracy Deconstructed.